Before we get started, I'd like to run through a couple housekeeping items. All attendees are placed on mute upon entry into the webinar. If you have a question at any time for our presenters, please enter that question into the integrated question feature within GoToWebinar or into the chat box. Then when we get to the end of the webinar, we will make sure we ask all those questions and we'll take the time to answer every question. Today's handouts, which include this introductory slide deck, our presentation slide deck, and the CEU form, are all available within the integrated handouts feature of the GoToWebinar app. You can also find them posted on the CSOHIMSS website. If you go to events and past events, you should see them right there at the top of the list. We are recording today's webinar, and a recording of the webinar will be posted to the CSOHIMSS YouTube channel, and we'll also post a link on the CSOHIMSS website page. We still have a few folks logging in, but we're going to go ahead and get started and run through a quick introductory slide deck. My name is Scott Mash. For this fiscal year, I'm serving as the past president and HIE liaison for the Central and Southern Ohio HIMSS chapter. And again, the CEU forms available under Events and Education Past Events. These CEUs are applicable to those with the CAHIMSS and CPHIMSS certification. If you would like to get in touch with the CSOHIMSS chapter, you can find our website at csohio.himsschapter.org, and you can email csohio.president@himsschapter.org. Our president this fiscal year is Mr. Jeff Haas from from Premier Health. You can also email csohio.info@himsschapter.org, and that goes to most of our board members. We are active on social media, share a lot of information about upcoming events and articles and things of interest to healthcare IT professional. You can find us on Facebook at CSOHIMSS, Twitter at /CSOHIMSS, and a long link to the CSOHIMSS group on LinkedIn. But the easiest way to find that is just log into the LinkedIn website and search for CSOHIMSS. We would like to take the time to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, we could not have our fall and spring conference and some other events we do throughout the year. Our sponsors are absolutely critical for our success, and we just want to thank those that have stepped up and sponsored our chapter. Our premier level sponsors are Cover My Meds, Expedient, Ahead, Malwarebytes, Signet Excel, and EHR Integration Services. Our elite level sponsors are Metasource, Blue Orange Compliance, Tech Systems, Obix Perinatal Data Systems, Data Gravity, Redspin, DMI, Time Warner Business Class, NTT Data, Excite Health Partners, Leidos, and Winthrop. Centricom, ServiceNow, and Sagacious Consultants. We'd like to share some information on some upcoming CSOHIMSS events, so you can get these blocked out on your calendar. We are currently planning our fall conference. Now, we haven't tied the date down yet. We're looking at October 7th or October 28th. We're looking at several different topics. We're probably going to have a range of speakers for this conference. One of the topics we're looking at is the new proposed macro regulation. So just keep your eye on the CSOHIMSS website for more information about this upcoming fall conference. We do have some more Lunch and Learn webinars on the schedule. We'd like to share some information on those. Next month, August 10th, Wednesday, August 10th, noon to 1, our presentation will be Privacy and Security in Healthcare, What You Need to Know, presented by Mr. John DiMaggio, who is the CEO and founder of Blue Orange Compliance. We have the registration link at the bottom of this slide. Again, you can download these slides. In September, our Topic will be EHR conversion and data storage best practices, presented by Ms. Christine Piper and Mr. Jamie Steck from EHR Integration Services. Wednesday, October 12th. The topic will be Ohio, the next generation data sharing network for results delivery to translational research, presented by Mr. Dave Billiter, who's the COO of Signet Excel. Wednesday, November 9th. Our presenter will be Malwarebytes. They're still kicking around a couple topics, but Malwarebytes will definitely be our presenter. Probably going to be something on malware, or a related topic. Wednesday, December 7th. The topic will be how we can enhance our end users' experience, a pragmatic approach to improving provider and clinical user logon times. John Flamond from Lockbridge will be our presenter. We went ahead and blocked out Wednesday, January 11th, February 8th, March 8th, April 12th, May 10th, and June 14th for our Lunch and Learn webinars in 2017. We are searching for speakers and presenters for these dates. If you have something you would like to present, please by all means contact us. Now, these presentations must be educational in nature. This is a great way to gain the needed points and needed experience to advance your membership status with HIMSS. If you are, one of your goals is to become a senior member or a fellow member of HIMSS, you must have presentation points. This is a great way to get those points. So with that, we're going to go ahead and transition over to today's speakers. Give me just a second here so that I can unmute our speakers. Okay, Mr. Beasley, I believe you should be unmuted, and I am going to make you the presenter. And again, for our attendees, if you have any questions at any point in time, please, please, please enter that into the integrated questions feature or into the chat box. At the end of this presentation, we will make sure we ask all questions. With that, I'll turn it over to our presentation team.
All right, thanks, Scott. This is Mark Gerschutz, the IT Director at Wood County Hospital. Kind of pinch hitting in for Joanne White. She's at a conference this week, the CIO at Wood County. I have along with me Rick Crawford, who's our Interface Architect, and Christine Wulff, our ED Analyst. For those of you that don't know, Wood County is located in Bowling Green, Ohio. We're a nonprofit general acute care facility serving 5 counties in Northwest Ohio. From an IT perspective, we've achieved meaningful use stage 2, year 2, and we're in the process of our year 3. We've also reached HIMSS Analytics stage 6, and just this year received the Most Wired Award for 2016. We're here to talk about our journey in cloud analytics, looking at what are we going to do with this data? What are we going to do with all this information that we have presented to us? Looking at different ways to transform that, and how is that going to bring us through as healthcare, the regulations keep changing and evolving. As we're looking at it, we wanted to make that a priority in our environment. And we also want to reach our HIMSS MRAM Stage 7, and analytics, business analytics is a huge component of that. So that's why we were reaching out and looking for a partner to work through this. As we'll continue on, I mean, everybody is struggling with staffing issues and different components. So we were looking to see what are the options out there. There's different vendors, different ways to do it, and so that's where we worked with G2 to come up with a solution and really augment data that we already have. We started with G2 about a year ago when we reached an agreement with them, and in August we started transferring data. We had a new project kickoff in November, and we've been live since February. So it's just the speed at which we've been able to get things up and running, and we'll show you the actual product later so that you really get a hands-on look of what we've been able to come up with. The challenge that we have is to really stay on top of the regulations and the piles of data. I mean, now that everybody is using some type of EHR, they've got this mountain of data, but it's just data. It's not information, nor is it real time, and nor is it actionable. So those things become a challenge that we need to try to overcome. We're always looking backwards. We're not able to look real time and be predictive of things. The other challenge is nobody has any resources to do this. How fast can we get these things going out the door? So what we're going to is we needed to find some type of platform that would scale with us, look at different measures that we want to, but then get it so that it's real time, or at least near real time. I mean, a lot of things you talk about real time, you can't really get to that level. But as long as you're looking at the here and now, even if it's 15 minutes delay, that's real time. And so we want to make sure that we've got that information, and it allows us to transition into a strategic mechanism instead of a reactive. Let's plan these things out and look at what we can do instead of just reacting to, oh, well, that bad event happened, so let's change this. Well, but by the time you change that, you're already moving on to the next thing. So that's what we've done with G2. We're trying to head to that, to have speed with it, to really come up with a platform that is evolving, but yet lets us have actionable data. So with G2, it's a cloud service there that really, it sits there on Amazon Web Services. It's integrated with Tableau. It creates a super record of all our data. A lot of people in your organizations, you've already got interfaces that are running. What we were able to do is just sniff off those interfaces. We didn't create a lot of new components here. We have ADTs going. We had orders going. We had results going. We have these information already flowing about, so let's just send a copy to G2 as well and let their system chug on it and come up with some information that we can use and use actionable. And even where we're working today, we're going through lots of prototypes with G2 and trying to pull out different data elements. And some of those things have required us to dig deeper into our Cerner environment to dig out those details. And any system that I've seen, finding those tidbits of data or those discrete data elements is a challenge in itself. So it's forced us to learn more about our own systems to be able to provide that up to G2 to have that power of the manipulation of the data. What G2 can also then provide with this is a library of applications. It's not just one little report that you're looking at. You're looking at ED throughput, you're looking at readmissions, or you're looking at business development plans. You're looking at a reduction of duplication of effort. I mean, a lot of these different reports that people are asking for, they're asking for the same thing, two different people, the same thing for different reasons. Well, why aren't we using the same set of data, the same set of playbooks, dashboards, so to speak? And that's what this brings, this brings this dashboard of information to us. It allows you to drill in and find out that information and find the related visits to it. You're able to get down to that detail, because as you're seeing this, what's going to end up happening is you're going to see pictures become painted. And that's the beauty of having a dashboard system that has that drill-in capability. So you're looking at this picture here as we're driving up a steep cliff. Well, if you're not using your data, if you're not learning from it, you're just going to fall off the cliff. The data is telling you things, and it's a matter of trying to figure out what that is. So you need to hang on, you need to pay attention to what's there and use that information that we have available. Where that brings us next is to the future of machine learning. You have all this myriad of data, and now with things like Watson, Azure, or Amazon's machine learning, you're able to take those tools and slam it up against our data, and then you can start doing analysis, what ifs, or different statistical components of data that you wouldn't have known which way to look at things. And that's where the power of the technology comes in, is it allows you to look at things from a different perspective than what you may have looked at in the past. What we're used to seeing is the visual discovery, really. We've bar graphs, different ways to visualize, and those are the pictures. And so when you put those two together, as you look at the picture there on the right, you've got, that's just random data that we're looking at, but it's about some subset. Well, the graph is pretty, it kind of shows you some things, but then the machine learning, you can look at the circles down at the bottom where it's saying, wait a minute, there's something important that needs to be here. You need to look at that. And that's what a lot of this comes down to, is it's raising a flag for you to go, wait, look at this piece of data here, because it is what's important. You need to go look here, figure out if it is telling you that you've got a process problem or a people problem, a workflow problem, a patient problem. It's that flag for you to go drill down deeper. And I think that's what we're all looking for, is there's lots of problems that we want to solve, but we need some help in getting to what is it that we're supposed to be looking at. We can say that we have a problem with ED throughput, but that's general. We need to have something that starts waving flags and say, well, let's go look at this aspect, or let's go look at the door to bed. Let's go look at these components so that we can then drill down further. So speaking of ED throughput, this is one area that we've been working through with G2, and thinking of your quality measures, ED 1, 2, and 3, and you're looking at the door to departure for both admitted and non-admitted patients. And so right there you're seeing a snippet, which we'll show you the live version here in a couple minutes, but you're able to take that and visualize that data. Visual discovery is where we need to go. We need to have those flags. And now with new things like word clouds, you're able to then have things pop out at you. When we've seen things, when you're just trying to visit on the longer stays, you see abdominal pain, chest pain. Those are our two biggest long stays, all because the word cloud just popped it out. Now, talking to our ED director, she might say, well, yeah, I know that. Well, now this confirms that, but that also helps you to focus. It helps you, as you're looking at all this data, trying to figure out what path you go to try to solve a problem. You take that and you're able to focus it. You're able to get rid of the throat pains, the wrist injuries, because those aren't where our long stays are. We're able to focus on what can we do in these areas. And maybe we're not going to be able to do things, but it's there. What machine learning can do on top of that then, besides having that visualization, is it can help us be predictive. So looking at all these things that we're having to record for the core measures and the different components that we want to record internally, we already record those things, but of those things, what of those components lead to a highest probability of a predictor that you're going to have longer than 180 minutes? And so looking at that, the bed to decision time, which may seem as obvious, but that's where it is the most impactful. So if you can focus on that, you're going to have the ability to know with a fair certainty that we're going to run past that 180 minutes. So now we're up to a blow-up version here, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Christine, and we're going to go through a live version, kind of looking at these components and have her help describe the process and these widgets and this data that we've got made available to us.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, this is Christine. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our dashboards that we have so far. And you're looking at the first one, which is the ED throughput dashboard. You can see each little section is a widget where you see the blue graph bars. You can see the yellow banner bars across the top are kind of a creamy yellow, and those are filters. So I'm going to look at this first widget here, which is ED arrivals. If I hover over a certain date, I can see how many patients had come into the ER for that day, and I can actually, by clicking on this little icon here, drill down into the actual patient data. I won't do that today for HIPAA reasons, but we can do that. You can see this is a week's worth of time, starting over here on the right with today, and then moving backward by 6 more days. If I wanted to isolate a day, I could click on, say, July 10th, and all the widgets below would set the data for that date. So I can see that these 2 doctors were on duty in that 24 hours, and this is the data that came through. To go back, I can either click that bar again or click revert up here at the top. The next widget is our ESI, which is the Emergency Severity Index. We have to assign that to every patient. And I can see by this bar here that our most common are a number 3 or an urgent level. I could also click on that bar and filter all of the other widgets to that. And then I could actually get into the individual patient data by clicking on this View Data button. Length of stay by attending. These are our ER physicians and their length of stays. If you hover, you can see their average length of stay. And then we have our benchmark out here of 180, and then another line that shows the average for these physicians here. If I wanted to look at a specific physician, I could click on, say, this physician here, and it would reset all the other widgets for his data for the days that he worked during that 7 days. So this physician worked 2 days. He saw 19 and 9 patients on those 2 days. And I can click to go back. Door to Depart is our most important widget right now, and we actually have up here, if you can see where my mouse is hovering, a Door to Depart tab that fine-tunes it down even further. But we hover here and we can see our median times and for how many patients. Our average time is this line, and again our benchmark here. So I can look at each day for that. To the far right is a filter where I could include inpatient and observation patients if I wanted to, and even outpatients. But for today it's just set for emergency room patients. We'll talk more about the door to depart time when I get to that next tab. Door to bedtime will measure the time the patient registers to the time they're assigned to a room. Our current average is 8 minutes, so we're doing pretty good with that. But if you hover over each of these bar graphs, you can see how many patients and what the median time was for that date. Bed to doc would stand for the time the patient's assigned to the bed to the time the doctor or provider assigns themselves to the patient. So you can see when I hover what the average time is there and what the total average time is for the 7 days. Doc to decision time basically is the time the doc assigns himself or herself to the patient, and then to the time of decision for depart, whether they're going to be admitted or discharged or transferred. That would be the time here. So if we hover, you can also see in that box the median time, and I could drill down into that day's worth and look at each of those patients if I wanted to. Almost every widget has the ability to drill down, and that's how we can go back and look and see what variables there were with that patient and maybe why our length of stay was longer than we expected. This widget is the doc's decision to depart to the time of depart. So we can tell how long it takes from the time the doctor writes the order or puts in the time of decision, and then the time it takes the nurse to get the patient out of the department. Our average time here, you can see, is 24.3 something minutes.
Hey Christine, for a second here, one of the things that we went through as we were working with G2, as Christine was showing those, going into the validating of seeing those data elements, going and seeing, okay, what patients fell into this. There was over the past year, we've had a lot of integrated events basically where we're validating the data, making sure that the numbers that we're seeing make sense, that they correlate with what we're getting. And so by using that data made available there to view that patient, you're able to do that drill down and prove out that, yes, this is a correct number. Another thing that actually pointed out to us is we've got human interactions issues here, which if anybody thinks that your data is going to be 100%, you got another thing coming, because all of this data is built on human intervention, and they're going to make mistakes. We found where people are registered wrong, or the doctors put in the wrong time, and so you see a negative length of stay or something like that. Those things you're going to have outliers, and that's where you have to let those outliers fall out and let the picture paint itself.
Right, definitely. Moving on then, decision to depart by disposition. This will show you where all of your patients for that 7 days went from our ER. Diagnosis and complaint. This is the word cloud that Mark was referring to previously. So for the 7 days that we are representing on this dashboard, abdominal pain is our biggest complaint, followed by chest pain. We can select over here on the door to depart histogram a group of patients and look to see what the most common complaint was. So if I pick the 180-minute to 300-minute time period, highlight that, the word cloud will update for whatever that primary complaint was. And that kind of gives us an idea then when our length of stays are long, what kind of patients are contributing to that. And again, there's that abdominal pain. And we have found, like, CAT scans with contrast obviously delays the length of stay. And I'll revert back. The next tab then is the door to depart tab. So this is another dashboard, but just specifically for door to depart. We'll give it a second to load here. Okay, so in this tab we have the 6 widgets, door to depart for all ED patients. The next one below it is door to depart for non-behavioral health patients, and then the last one on the bottom left is door to depart for behavioral health patients. So this left side shows 7 days worth of data. The right side for the same categories shows 3 months data separated by month. So if I hover over May for all patients, I can see my median length of stay was 121 minutes, and the average for that 3 months was 120. Same thing for door to depart. You can hover over it and see what the median length is. So for May it was 117, for June 117, and July 118. Those are our non-behavioral patients. Down at the bottom then you can see we have very small number of patients represented in this week for behavioral health, and we have found that we had an issue with our length of stay sometimes with these patients waiting for a facility to accept them or for transport. So over here on the 3-month side I can see the median length of stays, and then I could drill down to try to figure out why our length of stay is longer for these patients and what we can do to help that situation. Okay, that's pretty much it for this dashboard. And then we move, oops, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's right. As Christine gets this next, oh, it did slide up there. As before I was talking about painting pictures and how you need to have the data wave the flag at you. Well, now, it may not be a Monet or a Van Gogh, but it's still painting you a picture. It's allowing you to make correlations with the data that you have at you. Sorry, I step on Christine's toes a little bit, but here you're looking at the ED arrivals, and you can see on Monday and Tuesday during the day, or during that 10 o'clock to 9 p.m. time frame, that's when we have most of our patients come in. So that picture's been painted, and now you can do correlations off of that. So with that, I'll let Christine continue. Sorry, Christine.
No, you're fine. Anything you want to add is fine. You can see by this graph that we would probably want our bulk of staffing to be between these hours where we have more arrivals by hour, which in the next screen when we get to the ED length of stay will show that we are doing it right here at Wood County because that is the time period where we have our most nursing staff and our provider staff also. And we'll get to that in a minute. This other graph down here, it just kind of shows the same thing, but it's in a line graph form. So there are points that you could click on, and so this is set for 3 months. So at this point in time, in that 3-month period, we had a total of 246 visits. So that's 11 o'clock in the morning time. And then when you get to 6 p.m., let me hover a little better, you get 261 total visits there. So you can see that on the line graph. This other little widget over here, I have not used too much. It's a weekly representation of our hourly arrivals and how many patients are in the department. There are little spots or dots on here that you can hover over, and it gives you information everywhere you hover. Oh, there is this filter up here on the upper right, so I could change this 3 months to just the previous month, and then you would see that this graph would change. You still see the orange on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays and even on the Mondays, the dark orange red color, which are our busiest hours. But when you have 3 months worth of data, it's pretty impressive.
And another thing that we've noticed, being in a college town, and now that the school's not in session right now, it's in the summer session, we can see that some of our other times that if you compare different times of the year, that are Friday, Saturdays, they bump up a little bit, or even as a whole, everything bumps up. But there's other correlations that you have due to a total non-event. It's just a time of year thing, but at least you're able to have the picture painted and correlate it to that.
True, very true. So I was talking about our staffing pattern based on our hourly arrival, and I would go to the next ED length of stay tab and filter it with the same time period, and you can see that our length of stays don't match the heavy hourly arrival time. So we are staffing correctly. We are, working efficiently here. And then if I needed to, I could drill down into this hour of that day of the week and see what the issue is. Is there certain providers, certain complaints? I can drill down and look into that info. So this is our ED length of stay per hour over a 3-month period. And then down here we have our ED attending physicians, their average length of stay. So you can hover over the bar for that doctor's name and see what their average is. I could also drill down into this by clicking on that line. Down in the bottom graph is the ED length of stay graph versus the number of patients. So we can see the correlation. Let me take those off. We can see the correlation of ED patients versus the length of stay. So if we have a smaller amount of patients, we don't want to see our length of stay higher, but there are some times that that does happen, and then you could look into that. And as soon as this reloads, I will show you what I'm talking about there. Should be in any second.
Used to take a month.
Yeah.
And this would be the challenge of doing a live demo.
Yeah. I can kind of hover over one over here, but oh, there we go. We got it now. Okay, so here we had 44 patients, but our length of stay was 159 minutes. What we would rather see is 73 patients and the length of stay 151 minutes. So you can look into this and drill down in to see what was going on at that time. You could look and see what physician was on, and you can see what the situation was. That's pretty much it for me, unless, Mark, you have something to...
No, that pretty much wraps up the the visualization of our ED throughput. But then what we've been able to do is take that same set of data. I mean, we've been basically stubby penciling this information, capturing it in Excel spreadsheets, doing all these counts, and what we've been able to do is come up with that same worksheet, except for it's real live data right there, helping to eliminate 6 man-days worth of work trying to come up with these numbers each month. When here, once you've got to analyze, know where it's coming from, consolidated, it's all right there and automated. So now we're able to save that time and use it towards actual analytics. Here we're able to look at all these different components, the visits, how did the patient come in, what if they were behavioral health patients. Each of those we can do the same thing where we could drill down if we wanted to look more into it. Each of these components show us what we've been collecting all along, but now we've got it there real time without us having to do anything more. We're able to look at where did all of our discharges go to, and how did that affect our patient care as we went through. So looking at the different medians, we've got all these door to beds, provider to discharge, the length of stay for discharge and admission. We've got all these components to actually allow us to make decisions on it. It becomes actionable information. Now, after you take all that data, and we're going to hit through a couple slides here. These are basically what we showed you live, so they're in the slide deck so you have them for reference. But now let's throw the machine learning on it. And by start doing these are some of the samples that we're still kicking around and making sure that these are valid yet. But 68% of the patients stay leading admission are shorter than 180. Patients with abdominal pain are 18 times more likely to stay, which may be an obvious thing, but once again, it's where are you going to focus? And then if you start doing these things, if abdominal pains and chest pains were removed from the mix, 96% is less than 180 minutes. So once again, it's helping us to focus the right area on what needs to be worked on. Don't do work on things that you think might be wrong. This is kind of showing you, it's raising that flag of where it's going. And so that's where this can all move into. Then we're going to go, we've got some other prototypes that we're working on. We're going to go back to the kind of live view of these prototypes. We want to see where are our patients coming from? Where are they coming from? How are we going to market ourselves? And so by doing this visualization, once again, okay, we've got somebody that came from Missouri. You can look at the patients by zip. If you zoom into the patients by zip code, you can look at it and say, oh, well, that looks right. The little red blob there, let's hover over that and see that, oh, that's Bowling Green. Well, that makes sense that that's where the most of our patients, 93 in this instance, are coming from. And on the side, you've got the ability to filter on encounter types, insurance names, different what month are we even looking? So we're looking at May data here. So you're able to look at different components there and say, okay, where are patients coming from? And once again, you have to hover, the drill down, all those capabilities are built into here as well. The next one is going to the admitting reason with the word cloud. And so take that same kind of concept with the visualization of our map and, okay, what are their chief complaints? And so if we click on Bowling Green, now look, it changes the word map to something different. Or if you go out to, I don't know, where, that's Napoleon, I think, zip code, but these you can click on them and see where they're coming from, or you can click on the actual word cloud, the word in the cloud, and see where those patients are coming from. So once again, you've got this flow back and forth of being able to dive into the data, dive into the information, and make it actionable. This next one is kind of breaking it down. Instead of by geographic, let's look at it by age. So let's select this age range 55 to 70, and these are the reasons that they're coming in June into the ED. So, okay, chest pain's showing out there as bright, so that's the highest one there, but then there's other ones that are out there. You may notice that there's words that are similar in nature, And that's just because a lot of this is text-based comparisons, and so there's lots of different ways. Even if you get to where you use an ICD-10 codes, there are lots of families that you would have to really work hard to kind of put them together so that they all mean the same thing. So this last slide here is with our discharges, our transfers out of the ED. I think that that's one of the areas that we've kind of wanted to focus on and really understand why are we transferring patients out. I mean, there's reasons to transfer patients out. I mean, we don't provide all services here at Wood County, so there are definitely going to be reasons that we transfer people out. But there are also reasons that maybe we should have admitted this patient here locally instead of transferring out. And so how many patients are being transferred out, and how many of those could have maybe we treated here at the hospital instead of losing them to another facility? And so we're able to break that down. We're able to break it down to where they went, who was the doctor. You've got a nice bar graph there that you can drill into all the patients, and you can start doing research. When we were looking at it, initially there was one that we thought was kind of odd. We didn't understand why they were being transferred there, so we found the encounter number. We went and actually read the note in this instance. So we went into Cerner and read the note, and it was the patient's preference. And it's like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. And I wouldn't have expected it. It just was me being an IT. I don't catch all of those things and understand how those work. But it was, once again, it was a flag. That's what we're all about, is painting these pictures and trying to come up with flags to help draw your attention to. We do have one more, and that one we can't show you live because it's got a lot of financial numbers on it. But this is our revisits. They're 30-day readmits and 72-hour readmits. Looking at this, you've got the same word cloud there with the reasons for visit, but now you've got all the patients that have been readmitted, and now you can hover over and see how many times they've been here. The bigger the box, the more times they've been readmitted. Also, you've got different color codes. The red is they're currently a patient here, so maybe there's something that we can do about this to make sure that they're getting the care that they need when they go home, so they aren't readmitted. Help get that home health stuff set up so that we're not dealing with the readmission component. And so this lets you dive and dissect that data differently. So, well, that's been our journey. We started with a bunch of data collection that we were already collecting. We just sent that to up to the cloud. We then use those components and come up with this visualization. What we've learned is that you really need to understand your workflows and how that data is generated. Just saying that you want this, well, when does the doctor actually assign themselves to the patient? Well, you have to know that workflow, and you have to understand the mistakes that come with it because of human error, the third bullet point there. Right now, a lot of we have gotten to less than 0.5% that we're off. We have found things that aren't showing up that we would expect to, or vice versa. But we've got it narrowed down to 0.5%. And as I've said, if you're trying to paint a picture and you've got one little brush stroke that goes off, it's not going to detract from the whole picture. You're still going to be able to understand what that correlation is. And so it's trying to put your blinders on to that 0.5% so that I've seen that happen in organizations where they see, well, that data's not valid. Well, I can prove that data will never be 100% valid because humans are involved. And if you think otherwise, I probably shouldn't say anything on that further. But we really need to focus on making sure the data is valid. And so we went through a huge effort with G2 to make sure that data was valid, to get it down to that 0.5%. We had to learn a new language. What does all this stuff mean to us? These are different ways to look, slice and dice information. So we really need to understand how to talk this lingo and make sure that we can work through that. Some of the things that we're hopefully to work up next is we want to look at the radiology process in ED. How does that impact length of stay? How about the EKG turnaround? And the quality measures, and just on and on. The things won't stop. There'll just be more and more things coming up. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and let you guys have an opportunity to ask some questions of what you've seen. I've got Rick on the line as well from a technical perspective if there's some detailed questions that we need to come up with, or Christine from the ED measures. Feel free to ask us a question.
All right, give me a second here, and I will pull up the questions. Sorry, it's not playing well today. Okay, here we go. Actually, there are no questions at this point.
Do I need to play the Jeopardy theme song?
That might help. So, but yeah, we have no questions. I checked the questions feature. I checked chat. So, Mark, I'm just going to put this out here. What's been the biggest payback from your investment in this reporting and visualization tool? Have you guys seen a marked clinical improvement, a marked financial improvement? But what has been the organization's biggest payback from your investment?
The biggest point right now is just the man hours and accumulating data. We're still, even though we've been live since February with the ED numbers, I don't know that we've really used it to its fullest potential yet. So to really start making some impacts to the clinical processes, but just the fact that Christine and other people, the amount of time that they're spending each month, I mean, if you figure 6 man days a month, that's quite a bit of time that can be reallocated to something more productive instead of just putting numbers together. And that may seem small, but that's just the start of this whole project. That's an immediate ROI versus, okay, now we've got everybody on board. We actually just presented this updated versions to the VP Council last week, and all the eyes were kind of like lit up and head shaking, and they started having more questions about what do we need to do, or how can we take that and run with it and make changes to make things better, because they're seeing those red flags to say, oh, you need to look at this. And I think that they're on the cusp to really get the whole benefit. Like I said, we do have a hard ROI already just on man hours itself.
Oh, we did have a couple questions come in now. So how many staff members work on this data and application?
How many staff members work on it?
Yeah, I guess what they're saying is how many resources do you have dedicated to the development and maintenance of the application?
I'll have to actually, so from Wood County's perspective, myself and Rick and Christine are the ones providing and validating the data. I don't know, we maybe have a couple hours a week that we've been working through this. I can't speak to the G2 side, so Mark Beasley, I'll have to let you answer that.
Well, thanks, Mark. I think the real issue is that it's cloud analytics as a service, and what we're doing is so they didn't purchase any hardware, they didn't purchase any software, and they've hired no one. The resources that are allocated, as Mark has indicated, it's been a few hours a week. Sometimes it's no time at all. The service is they don't install it, they don't configure it, they send us requests on some things they would like to see. We meet on a bi-weekly basis, sometimes for as little as 30 minutes, and we implement the changes and we put them back up into the test environment. We're actually getting ready to move forward with the next release. So from February, we're getting ready to, at the end of this month, we're in the middle of some testing. So again, you guys keep this real. It's been a few hours here and there.
True.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered the question.
I think that did. Next question is, can you tell if a long stay for hospital admit is due to a boarded hold or a delay in decision?
Yes, we actually have a widget for boarded holds, and when we have a long length of stay, like I said, we can drill down into that actual patient account and try to figure out, well, not just try to figure out, but we can see what was going on. But the data comes through to the dashboard, so yeah.
what we're working on right now is Mark had indicated, sorry, this is Mark Beasley again, is that it should have said lab in radiology. They're in the middle of a radiology process improvement initiative, and in the background we're actually running all the data and statistics around lab and radiology specific procedures, and then their correlation to the actual event in time, so specifically around doc to decision and the impact on that. So while we haven't we're not showing those visuals today. We're not creating new visuals. We're actually looking to provide indicators within the dashboard themselves to give them, one, a current historical of what's happening right now, and then a predictive component on, as Mark had discussed in the machine learning, running the numbers based on their statistics, order volumes, and the impact of lab and radiology with specific patient diagnosis types. So we're moving into that predictive piece. Boarded holds is one for inpatients. Waiting on specific transports for behavioral health is something else we're working on. So yes, all of those. We're now at the point where we're peeling the onion back another layer.
All right. Next question is, what roles is your team comprised of when it comes to determining what and how to track?
So a lot of what we started with were those that, like when we were looking at those monthly statistics, that's where we started the components. We started looking at those components that we had already been collecting over time, and we wanted to see it in a more actionable fashion. So Joanne, along with myself and working with Katie and Christine and the ED, kind of pulled together to make sure that we were talking the same language, that we knew what door-to-bed meant, we knew what these things meant, so that we were all, that it wasn't just coming up with a new statistic. So we were kind of basing it off that at this point.
I would also say the federal government.
Unfortunately.
So yeah, where we started, Scott, was, and the person who implemented the question, are around, quality measures, specifically ED1, ED2, and ED3. And as a lot of people know, it's an issue. Length of stay in the emergency department is a significant issue that affects value-based purchasing. So it was kind of predefined for us. And then we look to automate their reporting and provide them the visual component.
Okay, next question. How are physicians and staff buying into tracking and ultimately being evaluated by widgets? How do you get them on the same page?
Christine, I'm going to defer to you a little bit because you've been the one that's been using the data a little bit more than I have at this point.
Right now we're kind of in the early phase of this and still validating some things. They have looked at some of it, and we talked to them about length of stay. We post our measures in our break room so everybody knows what's going on. But as far as the G2 and the adoption of the dashboards, we're in the early stages, stages of it.
So they're an outsourced emergency department group, and we're working with the director of that organization and his assistant director specifically. You are using the tool and asking a lot of questions. They're cautiously optimistic, keeping it real here.
The other thing we've seen in other instances with physicians anyways is that if you actually post their names or numbers with it, they tend to be a little bit more competitive and want to drive that to become better than the other person. So I'm optimistic that we'll have a positive outcome from it, from some of the other reports that we have published in the past.
Yeah, I agree.
I do have another question just come in. It looks like abdominal pain and chest pain stand out for you. What new thinking is there about how to deal with these delays?
Well, that's part of why we have the ED-RAD PI initiative going right now. We are trying to pinpoint where our delays are. With abdominal pain, we're finding a lot of times it's the CAT scan with the oral contrast because you have to wait so long before you can scan the patient. And then in the nighttime hours, we're finding things like we don't have a radiologist on staff and we send our reports out to be read, so there's a delay there. We're trying to fine-tune and try to shave off some minutes based on that PI. And G2 is working alongside of us developing and working in the background so that we can identify some of that stuff.
Looks like that is the last question. I want to thank you guys so much for presenting for our Lunch and Learn webinar. Great presentation. Thank you, thank you. To all of our attendees, please look at the upcoming webinars and get registered for those as well. Keep an eye on the CSOHIMSS website. Give me a few days and we'll get this recording uploaded to the CSOHIMSS YouTube channel. So thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Much, much appreciated.